As a marketing person, you'll probably think that my slides are a little bit odd, because what I did is, rather than put slides with very few words on it, which is what you would normally do, I decided to put slides with lots of words on it so that you guys had notes and you wouldn't have to try to take notes as I was going. You could just sit back and we could have an interactive session. So I hope that's okay with you. So there's lots of words up there. Don't worry about it. They're in your handouts. Don't worry about taking notes. And we're just going to have a discussion about marketing. And what I want to do is share some of my experience and some of the common mistakes that I've run into in working in marketing over the last 15 or so years. I'm actually an engineer by education. And what the heck is an engineer doing in marketing? That's a great question. I probably, like many of you, as I read the goal in graduate school, fell in love with it, started to learn everything I could, and I really connected with the logic part of it. And when I read It's Not Luck, I knew that was what I wanted to do. So I focus a lot on the marketing side, and when I'm not working on marketing, I take the marketing stuff I'm going to talk about today and apply it to my business. So there's a lot of lessons learned, and I've designed this to be more interactive. So please, at any time, if you've got questions, feel free to raise your hand. I do have a microphone here, and they'll probably want to catch some of those questions on the mic. So if you could raise your hand, and then I'll run over and make sure you have that. Right now it's off, so if you're the first one to get it, you'll need to turn that on. Okay? So before we get into the presentation, let me just ask you, why do we improve? So why do we, in our companies and the organizations we work for, why do we implement drum buffer rope or critical chain project management? Or why do we look to improve? To what end? What are we trying to achieve when we improve? Any ideas? Make more money. Okay. So that's a great answer in this group, right? The goal is to make more money. Okay, but what does that mean specifically in terms of improvement? So how does that happen? Right? So we implement critical chain, or we implement drum buffer rope, and the effect is that we uncover capacity. True? Now, how does that translate into more money? We got to sell it. Aha. And that's why we're here today. Because we can implement critical chain, or we can implement drum buffer rope, or the distribution solution, but if we cannot sell the capacity we just uncovered, the bottom line impact is nothing. Yes, maybe we could lay off some resources, maybe, but that leverage is pretty small relative to what if we could sell the capacity we just uncovered. So that's why marketing sales plays a very important role in implementations, is now we need to be able to sell it. Now, of course, in some implementations, our clients they have such a huge backlog that they don't necessarily need to sell more. They need to sell what they have, and in which case then selling more is not a problem. But if you do an implementation and you don't have a way initially to sell more, we've got to quickly transition to how are we going to sell that capacity we just uncovered. Okay? So speaking of capacity, in theory of constraints, we talk about 3 different types of capacity. So the bottom part is basically the capacity we've sold, or just our normal capacity we have. We then have protective capacity, and protective capacity is the capacity we need to absorb variability. So if we want to be able to meet all of our commitments, we need protective capacity to absorb the variability we have in our processes, so we can meet our promise dates. Any capacity we have beyond that is called excess capacity. Most of the world only thinks of 2 types of capacity, regular capacity and excess. But we think of 3 types. So regular capacity, protective capacity, and then excess. So what we're going to talk about is, if you have this excess capacity, let's sell it. Let's figure out how we can do something with it. All right, so if we do want to sell it, what we need to do is we need to exploit. So we're going to talk today about what does that mean in marketing. How do we exploit a market constraint? And generally, you have a market constraint if you do have some of this excess capacity. Now, that's a little bit of an oversimplification because your constraint is somewhere in the sales and marketing process. Exactly where it is, I don't have enough information to say, but generally it's in that area. So we're going to talk more about the generalities of that. And exploit, of course, means that we are going to make the most of what we already have. We're going to fully utilize what we have before we go add more. So we're going to capitalize on, benefit from, utilize, harness, any of those words you like to use, that is what we want to do. And we're just going to be doing it from the marketing perspective. Okay, and so these are the 5 marketing mistakes we're going to cover today. We're just going to quickly go over each one now, and then we're going to go into detail into each one. So the first one is not selecting the target market. That is by far the biggest mistake I see made. And consultants are particularly good at making this mistake. We don't want to limit our target market. We can help everybody with everything, right? And there is a tendency to not want to limit. We think we're going to lose out, we're going to miss out. So that is the biggest mistake, and we'll get into more detail on that. Not understanding what you're selling. What exactly is it that you're selling? What are the benefits that your client gets from what you're selling? Really, truly understanding that. And then doing nothing to generate leads. I'll ask people, well, what is your marketing and sales funnel? What does that look like? And I get a blank stare. You know, so using push marketing. So I'll tell you what my definition of push marketing is, but we see a lot of push marketing. And basically that's, you know, your stuff is being pushed at you. And when somebody's pushing something at you, what's the reaction? You know, you're not open to it, right? So then the 5th one is not measuring the right things or at all. So if you had a situation where you had excess capacity and you did have a sales and marketing funnel, but you weren't selling, I would say, well, let's look at your funnel and let's look at the data, right? Let's look at the metrics and see if we can see where the issue is. But a lot of times I run into people that usually they're not measuring at all. Not to mention the right things, they're not measuring anything. We just know there's not enough sales coming in. And it's hard to fix a problem if we don't fully understand it. So we're going to get into each one of those. Now, so what is marketing? Well, marketing is connecting with your target market and showing them you have the product or service that solves their problem or delivers better outcomes, explaining it to them where they can be found, and helping them to buy it. Now, it's kind of long-winded, but it's what you're selling, to who you're selling it to, and knowing where they are, where they hang out. What we want to do is help them to buy it and make sure they understand what the true benefits are. And marketing is a broader topic than Mafia offers. Some of you may know that I've talked a lot about Mafia offers. And today we're going to talk a little broader. We're going to talk about marketing in general. But I'm happy at the end if anybody has questions on Mafia offers to cover that. But we'll talk about the broader topic of marketing. Okay, so first up, not selecting a target market. Now, your target market is very easy. It's what do you sell and who do you sell it to? Those 2 things. So the first thing I would ask anybody who wanted help with their marketing or said, I'm having trouble selling my excess capacity, I would say, well, what do you sell and who do you sell it to? Sounds pretty simple, right? Can all of you answer that question? Yeah? We'll see. All right, so that's what a target market is. Now, knowing what your market really wants, who they really are, is very important, right? So if we are going to talk in their language, if we're going to be trying to communicate with them, we need to really understand who they are. So communicating where they're at without making them wrong is important, while pushing their emotional hot buttons. So there's been a lot of talk at this conference about the emotion, what was the second one? Intuition and logic, right? I'm going to hit a little bit on that today because people buy based on emotions and then they back it up with the logic, right? So we'll talk about those emotional hot buttons. And rationality is used as a tool to support the emotional. Writing your marketing to one very specific person, we call this your avatar. So I didn't make that up, that's a marketing thing. We're gonna write your marketing to one specific member of your target market called the avatar. Ellie.
Lisa, let me say that selecting the market, target market, partially needs to come from marketing itself, looking on the market and suggesting which market segments really have the best benefits from the products that we know how to do.
Okay, so Ellie's saying that the selection of the target market maybe should be driven by marketing itself, who might know about what the potential markets are. I have a slightly different opinion on that. We've got another comment here. He said marketing is too important to leave it to the marketing people. So I think it's a strategic direction. We're talking about what it is that you're going to do. And I think it's more of a kind of owner management decision about what we're going to sell and who we're going to sell it to. And I think input would come from marketing, right? Marketing's going to probably have some intuition and knowledge about the marketplace. They're certainly going to provide input. But I think it's a strategic decision. What business do you want to be in? I mean, how many of you are consultants in the room? Can I see? Raise your hand if you're a consultant. They're all over here. A few over here. Okay. Do you have a question or comment, Martin? Okay, it's on.
Because what we're talking about is going to an existing business, or we're in an existing business, and we already do business.
Yeah.
And you could say strategically, what do we want to be, or who do we want to sell to? So yeah, we can set a strategic approach, but we've got the business now.
Right.
So effectively, along the line with what Ellie says, whatever we're good at now is the area that we would have to focus on in the short term, the market, with a strategic saying yes, but we want to transition to a different market. Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah. Can I leave you in charge of this? Okay, so yeah, it could be that if we're already in business, we already do what we do, and then we might, if we decide that we want to do something different, certainly there would be a transition period. But the situation that I see a lot of times is that they do what they do. But then if I said, okay, what business do you want more of? Yes, and we can do an analysis of throughput per constraint unit and see where they make the most amount of throughput for the least amount of their capacity. We can do that. But when I ask the question, so given that information and knowing what they're good at, I said, what do you want to sell more of? I'm reluctant to get an answer. They don't want to give me an answer. And the reason that they don't want to give me an answer is because they don't want to limit who they're selling to. I want to sell to everybody. So even within the business that you might be doing right now, I suggest, or at least I want to challenge, that you might be able to further target within what you're doing today. I would guess that's the case for probably 90%, just based on experience. Okay, so we want to write our marketing to one specific person, the avatar, which is going to represent our target market. So the avatar is somebody we've said, this person represents who we're targeting. It's a person. The person has a name. The person has an age, male or female. I could describe a day in the life of this person. I know what problems they deal with. We want to understand that target market that well. See, and if your target market was too big, it's not it'd be hard to describe as one person. And I think there's also, you guys have already jumped to the fact that I'm suggesting to have a very focused target market as opposed to a very big target market, right? But yes, I am suggesting that you be very focused in your marketing. But that's not to say you only have to have one avatar. What I'm saying is that when you market, you should be marketing to one avatar. So if you had 2 avatars, should you probably have 2 websites, 2 brochures? If they're different, it'd probably be a pretty good idea, right? So your avatar, we want to enter that conversation going on in their mind, and the only way to do that is to have deep knowledge, deep understanding of this person. So that's the avatar. All right, so here's an example. Let's say that we wanted to be a health expert, or we were a health expert. So there was a health expert that was trying to decide what target market, what do they want to do? Well, health expert's pretty generic. I'm a health expert. I can help you with anything with your health. Probably not likely to get a lot of business. Well, they could go a little bit deeper, and they could become a weight loss expert. Or what about a fat loss expert? Or what about a belly fat loss expert? Or even better, belly fat loss expert for men 45 to 55 years old. Okay, now if I were going to write a marketing article, could I imagine Bob, who's 47 years old, right? Could I make a story about him? Could I understand what his challenges are? Why is it hard for him to lose that? Could I talk directly to him because I understand his problems? Whereas if I'm a health expert, I'm talking probably on a number of different topics, but if I'm the belly fat loss expert for men 45 to 55, every conversation, every piece of marketing, everything I write is targeted to Bob. I gave the avatar a name, right? So we can get very targeted and very specific. Okay, let's look at another example. So if you're a general practitioner, a physician, or you could be in internal medicine, that's certainly a little more specific. You could be a surgeon. You could be a brain surgeon, do brain surgery. Or what about brain surgery on non-malignant tumors? And if you needed surgery, if you had a non-malignant brain tumor, who would you want to go to for your surgery? The guy who's done 500 of them, or the general practitioner says, yeah, I could do that. Sure, we can make that happen. So just think about when your prospects are reading your marketing stuff, your website or your brochure or whatever it is, do they see a general practitioner who says they can do the stuff that they need and want? Or do they get that you get it? Do they get that you understand their business? So market where they hang out, in the way that they hang out, because now that I know Bob, now that I've defined Bob, I know what magazines he's likely to read. I know what sports he's likely to be involved in, probably that he watches football on Sunday. I know quite a bit of things about him, and I can probably get a pretty good idea of how to spend marketing money. Where do they hang out? How do they hang out? And now I have a really good idea on how to verbalize the UDIs, specifically how Bob would relate, how Bob would verbalize them. Because I want Bob to know that I get it, right? So I have to verbalize it in a way that they know that they're UDIs. They don't say, I don't have that problem, right? That's exactly right. That's exactly what I struggle with. When most hunters go out to hunt, they think like a hunter. But when a master goes out to hunt, he thinks like the deer. And that's what we have to do. We have to think like the prospect. Enter the conversation going on in their mind. You know you've done well when they ask you for a copy of, can I get a copy of that? You've described their problem so well, even better than they have. They probably haven't even tried to describe it. You know you're on the right track. So in thinking about applying theory of constraints to marketing in general, one of the things that occurred to me was that when we look at our buy-in process, we've got this, agree on the problem, agree on the direction of the solution, agree that the solution solves the problem, and so on. But how do I agree on a problem if I don't know who I'm talking to? So what I think is that we're missing layer 0 here. Who is it that I'm trying to agree on a problem with? At least from a marketing perspective, right? So what's layer 0? Who is it? Who is that target market? If your target market is not specific enough, they're just not going to relate. It's kind of hit or miss. You might get some people who relate, others may not. And so the more specific and the more targeted your market, the more you can talk directly to them in their language. Not selecting a target market in marketing is like not cutting your whip in operations. And we would never do that, would we? Would we ever not cut whip? Hello? No, right? We're going to cut. I mean, that's one of the first things we do. So the first thing in marketing is we have to say, what are we selling? Who are we selling it to? Okay? All right, and if you have no idea what your target market should be, so if you were a new company or you're an existing company but you're kind of not focused on anything but pretty good at a lot of different things, here are some questions that might help, and maybe you guys could come up with some additional questions. Where do you make the most throughput for the least amount of your capacity? So where is the T per CU the highest? We could use that as input. What do your customers compliment you on? What do they know you for? What part of your business do you have the most expertise in? What's the group of people who are most likely to benefit from what you have to offer and are willing to pay for it? So if somebody can't afford what you have, that probably is not a good target. And which target market can you, or you think you can create a mafia offer for? Right? So just some questions that to help you narrow it down. But it really is a business decision. It's a strategic decision. What business do you want to be in? And yes, we can use marketing information and competitive, we can look at the competitors in any particular area and say, where are their weaknesses? The whole SWOT analysis thing, I think that is way overrated, but I don't have anything against looking. I mean, I think it's helpful, but I wouldn't go solely based on a SWOT analysis. Everybody know what that is? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. You do that for the competitive environment you're in, so you could certainly do that. All right, does it make sense? Okay. All right, so now this is where we're going to do an exercise together. And I've got an example here of a consultant, but you can either use my example or use your own situation. And what I want to do is have you describe your avatar. So I want to take a couple minutes and you guys jot down a description of your avatar. If you want to use my example, I've said we're a TOC consultant. We've decided we want to help companies improve their project management. We have connected with an innovative project management software company that has recently developed easy-to-use, inexpensive project management software. So we have software. We're going to focus on CCPM. And now describe your avatar. So there's no right or wrong answer here. What I want you to do is be specific, right? Because I can't say that that's the wrong avatar. What I can say is it's not specific enough. So let's take a couple minutes and let's write down a description of your avatar. So name, age, any UDIs you think they might suffer from, kind of where they live, where they hang out, that kind of thing. All right, so let's do that. And when somebody has something that they wouldn't mind sharing, let me know. Let's try to get at least one person to share. Yeah? Okay. Can you pass the microphone?
Is it on?
Yep.
Okay. I came up with Joe. He's 35. He's an engineer, and he's really upset that he gets yelled at for his projects being late, even though they don't get to him on time. He doesn't get to put the kids to bed because he's working overtime to try to get the projects back on schedule.
Okay, good. So notice he's picked somebody that's within project management. He's not targeting necessarily the owner of the company. So you would have to figure out how would you get from that person to somebody who could buy your services, for example. Ah, okay, so maybe he's going to, because it's inexpensive, he wants to target this guy likes it, and then maybe it takes off from there, okay? And you could probably even go into a lot more detail, right? Because we can already start to imagine Joe and 35 and, you know, he doesn't get to go to the kids' soccer games because he's always working late. We can really start to imagine the frustrations he must face, okay? Anybody else have one they want to share?
So I actually know this guy. His name is Dudu. He's Israeli.
Okay,
He's about 45 years old. He's an architect.
okay,
And he's the CEO of his company. The company manages projects that design and construct building renovation for earthquake protection in Israel.
wow, now that's specific. Now realize that your avatar, so you would go after all the companies that do projects and do earthquake protection.
Yes, that's our
Okay.
specialization.
That's great. Very good.
Because that's what I chose, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
So I know that getting permits takes too long.
yeah,
Getting the tenants in the building, the people who own the apartments in the building, to agree to do the project and to play along is extremely tough, and you have to promise them way too much.
yeah,
And then design costs, getting all the engineering to do their parts. You can't control it. It's design and redesign and redesign,
Okay.
and they want more money, and they surprise him, and there's a lot of friction there.
yeah. So that's great. I mean, now you know so much about, say, Dudu? Dudu, okay? You know a ton about him. The only thing I would be concerned of is I'd want to make sure that the size of that market was big enough, right? I know it is. You know it is, then that's great. Yeah, so usually I never have the problem of anybody being too narrow, too specific. But look at how powerful that is. The fact that she knows exactly what it's not just project management. It's not just architectural firms. It's architectural firms doing these specific earthquake-proofing things. And we know that there's a big enough target market. Wow, we can, now what are they likely to read? What newspapers, magazines, online, where do you think they read, hang out? Where would you find these people?
There are some general newspapers in Israel that have journalists that specialize in this field, and they actually interview them.
So she was saying that there's journalists who specialize in the field and interview these people. They might read something like Architectural Digest, right? So we can now start to really figure out a lot about them. So that's pretty cool. Okay? Any questions on this, or anybody else have anything they want to share?
Just a question. So what I just heard,
Yeah,
besides it being an architect, and
Yeah.
besides it being an earthquake,
yeah.
the rest of it's likely to be the same. Now, a lot of the
It
same
could be.
Moody's are going to be there. It's going to be very consistent. And I'm just trying to understand. I mean, obviously, we want to make sure that there's a big enough market. And
Right.
just even going back what you said before, I think one of the things that blocks most companies or most people is how they view their market as being so small because they have such a small piece of it.
Right.
So often just looking at what's there, and there's plenty of clients that I've had or worked with or been part of, one of the first things is really to see what the potential size of the market is, even from that start.
Yeah, so a couple things on what you just said. So one thing that reminded me of is we tend to think that the smaller my target market, the less potential for me. And I'm only, let's say I have less than 1% market share now, and you want me to focus on a smaller bit, right? So that's always the fear and the concern. But the case I want to make is the smaller your target market, as long as it's big enough, the higher percentage of that market you will get because you will become the expert in that market. If every time there was an article about this architectural firm that does earthquake, and they were everywhere. I mean, they were in magazines, and everybody, they became the expert because of how they market. Are there any other architectural firms that are focusing on that? Probably not, because they're afraid to niche that much. So you become the expert in this area, right? Did I answer your question?
I think so. I mean, part of it was a question and part of it was a statement that, again, I think we block ourselves often of getting into that niche because of how big it is. And there's plenty of examples where you go talk to a company, and there's one client I'm thinking about, it's a $300 million business.
Yeah.
They're in an 80, I'm trying to remember what the total number was. It was like $800 million market in this one niche of the niche.
Right.
So it's so big, but just getting their minds wrapped around that there's such a small percentage that even getting to that next piece would be massive for them.
Yeah.
The point I was just trying to get back to is many of, as we know, one of the challenges that we face that, you know, I like to think about it like it's a 90-10. 90% of the UDIs are alike.
Yeah.
It's really understanding
It's
the 10%
10%
that really make us differentiate ourselves. And when you're describing this person as being able to extract those, because even in the Israeli, I mean, San Francisco, I mean, you could think about in earthquake areas, this becomes the message.
Yeah, and if you could become the go-to place for earthquake, you can probably charge a little more. You're not going to be competing with anybody else because you're the place. Nobody else specializes in it. If you go to anybody else's website, it talks about architecture in general. You go to this website, and it talks about architecture in regards to earthquake. It's the only place that does it. If you want that, that's where you go. So I can probably get a higher percentage, even though it's a smaller market, but that higher percentage of a smaller market will be more dollars in total, right? That's what we're after.
So that leads me to the question, because of this discussion is how small is too small? Well, I would say that probably for this kind of TOC consultant, a niche that will keep me busy for the next 6 months, even if I get 100%, a very, very big percent of it.
Is probably too small.
It might be a good way to start, though.
Yeah, you know, it might be hard to even get that small, depending on, you know, to get a consultant to be that targeted, I think would be difficult. Usually, we're talking, there's still millions of dollars in business, and I haven't run into any that's been real small, you know, like the market.
If it's too hard to get that targeted, then probably you can target as much as you like. You'll never get there.
Yeah, exactly.
Just quick comment regarding small or big focus market. The co-founder of PayPal, in his book 0 to 1, he says that quite often companies launched some, you know, internet product and saying, okay, well, there is 7 billion people, and if we take 0.01%, this is the revenues we're gonna get, and most of the times it doesn't work. It's better to say, okay, this is 10,000 people we're going to target, and we will take like 80% of that market, and that usually works much more often, and then from that base you expand. So I think have the very focused market, and then you can have another focused, and another focused, and another focused.
Exactly. Yeah, so to my point earlier about, you know, you start with one avatar, you can always add another avatar and another avatar, right? But in my consulting business, I figured my target market was maybe 10,000 companies. And that might be stretching it. I haven't run out of work. I mean, that's a lot That's a lot. But I can become the expert in that niche, right? And that's what we want. We want to become the expert in that niche. And they'd be crazy to go anywhere else. But everything we do, every time we interact with our marketplace, it should be in that position. You know, we're talking to that specific target market. We can't deviate off and talk about generic things. We've got to be talking specifically to that target market. Okay. All right, so it's not, this is the second mistake. It's not about you or your product or service. So like I said, we tend to not understand what we're selling. And when we go to sell, we tend to make it more about us or our product. I call it the salespeople, the show up and throw up presentation, where they show up and it's all in, and the first slide is our company's been in business for 54 years, and it's all about them. It's not about the customer at all. So it's about your prospect and the outcome or better business results they're seeking. And I have worked with some people who they're selling to somebody who doesn't want better business results, but they want that weight loss, right? So it's whatever the results are that they're after. So we really need to understand what those results are. The customer doesn't want products, services, or techniques. They want some outcome. And we really need to understand what is the outcome they want, why do they want it? What are they missing out on because they don't have it? What is having that extra amount of weight causing them? What are they missing out on in their life? People want value. The way we offer them value is in the form of results, which is in the form of our products or services. And selling a tangible, measurable result that the customer can expect to experience in the real world dramatically increases the price you can charge. So if you were choosing a target market and you had the choice between, I can sell weight loss, you can kind of measure it, and you could certainly measure it more easily than if I wanted to sell happiness, right? At least you can get on a scale and we can measure the weight loss. So the more measurable, the better. And for consultants, we do a very measurable thing. So that makes it a lot easier than some of the people like business coaches and people that are trying to improve happiness and things like that. Okay? All right, so if you don't understand what you're selling, then what tends to happen is when we're presenting our offer, presenting what we're selling, we basically increase the cost of it in our prospect's eyes. So typically, the price doesn't equal the cost. Your prospect is going, okay, that was the price they said, but look at the complexity and all the brain damage I'm going to have to go through, plus the risk. I don't know if this is going to work. So the more risk or fear that they sense, the more complexity that they think there is, the higher they think the cost is. So we have to make sure that in our marketing and in that interaction that we're making it as simple and easy for them to buy as possible. Right? We want to minimize the non-price costing and communicate well, so make it very, very simple. And communication is about the successful transmission of meaning. So you've achieved communication when a new logical connection is made, or another way to say that is an aha moment is triggered. If every time in your marketing, so if you were writing an article for your blog, or you were going to have an article in a magazine directed to your target market in their language, and you can give them an aha moment, that is extremely powerful. Right? You give them an aha moment. They're going to assume that you're the expert. Whether you are or not, they will assume it. They will impose on you that title. If a new possibility emerges, it's realized that the cost is much less than the value and that an action is likely to be taken. That's when we know that communication has occurred. If they're not likely to do anything, not likely to take an action, we obviously probably didn't communicate very well. Ultimately, your clients will then associate your brand with the solution they wanted unconsciously and think of you or your brand when they see similar situations in the future. They get that you get it. You're now associated with that solution. that area of solution, and they make that connection. We want high-value products and services that are tailored to our customers' needs so that they say to themselves, I never knew somebody could understand at this level. Or ask you for a copy of what you just presented, right? They get that you get it. If you don't understand your target market or what you're selling, then you have no chance of knowing what competitive advantage to create or what mafia offer to make. So that connects back to operations. You know, what area do we really need to improve, because now we know what their pains are. If we don't know what is important to them, it's hard to know, well, what offer would be really impactful, and therefore what operational improvement should we make. A mafia offer is not effective because of logical arguments, but an instinctive emotional response. I gotta have it. So getting them to that point, that's how we know that we've communicated well. All right, so the next exercise is, what are you selling? So we've got the avatar, and the target market is a combination of who you're selling it to and what you're selling. So now the question is, what are you selling? All right, so let's take a couple minutes and write down what you're selling. They're what? Yeah. A whole, yeah.
People use market niche, others use market segment. In this context, what's the right approach to building specific, how to distinguish between two?
Okay, ask me that after we finish. All right, anybody have something they want to share? And Orion just reminded me that there's the old example that's been out there a long time, that people don't want to buy a drill bit, they want to buy the hole. So that's kind of what I've asked you to do. You don't sell drill bits, you're selling the hole. What is it that you sell? Yeah.
I had an avatar which was, because we're a manufacturing business and we make plastic. But my avatar was a female buyer that represents large FMCG companies, brand owners. She's generally overworked, driven by price, under time pressure, multitasking with short attention span. So even though we make plastic display products, ultimately we're sort of selling peace of mind to that person. They can be comfortable that if they engage us to do their display work, it'll get done, and they don't have to worry about the time pressure. But what I find interesting is, how do you reconcile you know, what we consider our core competency, which is we make plastic products, and the management kind of adage of you should always focus on your core competencies, against, you know, really this issue of the service offering, which means we could basically sell anything. We're selling peace of mind. It's different from the specific core competency of the product that we make.
Well, plastic display, you said display products, correct? That they use in there to create like a retail display. And why do they need that?
Well, I guess we're helping them sell their own products.
Yeah, so you help them sell their products. You make their products look good.
Yeah.
That's what you're selling.
Yeah.
Right? So now that's still a core competency. And usually where a mafia offer or marketing comes into play, it's not that you're going to change necessarily your core competency, but you might change how you deliver it. So I don't have my glasses on. What does it say?
Yeah, it's a new tagline that we have, which is basically we make, you look good.
There you go.
So that was kind of interesting.
And I had not seen that ahead of time. No, okay. There is no magic going on here. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
okay. Anybody else?
In our case, my avatar is like managers or owners of mills, extracting mills that are over 60 years old, or yeah, 60 years old, and they have a lot of troubles managing how the plant performs and all the details inside of the plants, etc. So what we're selling to them is actually buying oil or the production they have and managing the plant in an efficient way so they can be more secure on how to, so the margin they're going to get, more or less, so to bring them all the knowledge that we have developed in how to manage the plant and buying the product they have in a good price.
So you offer to come in and run the plant for them?
Yes.
And so what they're buying is basically...
It's a service, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a service, but what are they really buying? What do they want? Why would they have you do it instead of them do it? Why wouldn't they just do it themselves?
Because of the results.
Right. So, yeah, so they're buying higher profitability,
yes,
maybe than they can get on their own. Okay, good. Anybody else? All right, so the third marketing mistake is doing nothing to generate leads. I've seen a lot of people who think that hope in a website is a strategy. And to make it add insult to injury, the website has a picture of the building on the front of it and talks about how they've been in business since 1954 and they have collectively have 165 years of experience. And 7 clicks later, you have no idea. But it talks about their values, their vision, their mission, what great quality they have. It's all about them, generally. But you know, that's pretty common. Is that hope? You know, you ask people what's your marketing and sales funnel? What is it that you do? And you just kind of get this blank stare. We wait for the phone to ring. That's the plan. So there are lots of ways to generate leads, and which is best really depends on your situation, and that's why testing is important. So it depends on that avatar and knowing where that avatar hangs out and how you might best be able to get in front of them. So there's lots of different ways you could do it. Which one is best? I don't know. Anybody who tells you they know for sure is probably misleading you slightly, because in marketing, the only way we know is through testing. We've got to test and see what works, because what we can do is we can look at data from what other people have done and say, okay, at least that's a starting point. That worked best for them. So let's try that. Like coming into this conference, Kathy asked me, what color should the, where did my badge go? Here it is. What color should these TOC Global buttons be? Right? What color should the TOC Global buttons be? That's what she asked me. And I said, well, I have absolutely no idea. But I can tell you from past experiments that blue on orange tested really well. Now, whether it will work in this case, I don't know. But it's not a bad place to start. If it worked in other places, maybe blue and orange is the ticket. And in this case, it's going to be, unless we asked everybody, what did you think of the blue and orange buttons? Did you notice them? You know, we won't really have the data. But if we really wanted to know if this was the right color, what we would need to do is probably have some people with the blue and orange and some people with a different color. And then we would need to ask people which ones did they notice, right? So, but it's pretty typical that we do nothing to generate leads. You can start by, if you're not sure what might work in your area and you haven't really done any testing in the past or you don't know, you can look to see what your competitors are doing. Usually if they've been doing something for more than 4 months, they're probably getting an ROI on it. I say probably because I have seen some people doing something and they have no clue what their ROI is, but they keep doing it. But probably they're getting an ROI on it. So you definitely want to understand what your funnel is, kind of what are the process. So we do content marketing, and they read this article, and from the article then they go do this, and then they go do that. Whatever it is for you, or maybe we call them or we email them. But you should have a funnel, and we need to track the data. Okay? And there are 3 ways to grow a business. So we can increase the number of customers. We can increase the throughput per transaction, so we can increase the money we get from each customer, or we can increase the frequency of purchase or repurchase. So do you think it's easier to get a new customer or to sell more to an existing customer? Yeah, sell more to an existing customer unless you really perform badly on a regular basis. Then in that case, it would be harder. But yeah, I mean, if they already know and like you, and you're doing a good job, you might be able to get more of the business if you don't already have more of the business. The more you can spend to get a lead, the less you have to worry about competition. Now, why do you think that's true? Anybody have any idea why that might be true? So if I knew I could send, if I told you, here's what I'm doing to increase my consulting business, I send out a direct mail piece. I send out, maybe I hit all 10,000 of my market every month, and it costs me $10 a piece. How many of you would rush home to go copy that? Why? Why don't you go?
$100,000?
Yeah, it would be risky, right? So the more that you can spend on a lead, the less you have to worry about your competition. So I usually don't worry about how much it costs. The question is, it's not how much it costs to get the lead, it's what do I get in return? Because if for every $10 I spent, I got 1,000 back, would that be a good deal? Yeah. I would do that. I would look for more of those opportunities. Well, yes, if there was a way I could spend 5 and get that same 1,000, that would be even better. So there's a lot of reluctance to spend money on marketing. A lot of reluctance.
Yeah, but why do you, I think there's a deeper piece, though, of why that is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about today with where business is, and you don't have to go far from the Wall Street Journal to see how much companies are spending in their marketing budgets or trying to get more sales,
Mm-hmm.
they're spending more and more, and their sales are dropping. Mm-hmm. So the belief in the system is it's broken. What we're doing isn't working.
Yeah.
So by doing more is not the way to break the issue. They're not getting to the root issue, and they're not getting to the problem that they have. But again, it's not just the money itself. I mean, anybody says, if I could spend $10 and I get 1,000 back, everybody's going to say yes.
Sure.
Question though is, will I get even 10 back? And I think that's where the problem lies right now, is even getting the 10 back for some.
I think you're more likely to get it the more targeted you are, right? So in a lot of like consumer product companies, they're advertising to everybody, right? They just, commercials on television, and it's hard for them. Either their sales go up or not, and there's probably like, at least a month delay to know did sales go up or not. For
and that's
us,
assuming there's only one campaign going on.
Oh yeah.
Which is the other issue.
For most of the, I don't work with those companies. I'm working with companies who are going to have a more targeted niche, right? Who can be very targeted, and we could do a test. We can send out, maybe we don't send out all 10,000. Maybe we do a $10,000 test and see what happens. Justin, any comments? Yeah. I could tell.
So in answer to the previous question, I would contest that cost per acquisition is rising. But even if it is, it's not the whole story, because you make these decisions on a marginal basis. So if you spend, in our business, we spend $100 to generate a book request. But every time somebody requests a book, we add that person to the database. So we have a database of 60,000 prospects. So that database yields business, in addition to the business that comes directly from the book requests. Plus, the business we already have results in referrals, so there's a certain flywheel effect. So because we, and probably some of your clients, are established businesses, their cost per acquisition is significantly greater than a newcomer into the marketplace would be, because they figured out how to generate a bigger return on that. So I don't care if the CPA is going up for me, as long as it's going up for me slower than it's going up for my competitors. I'm still going to win.
Yep, good point. All right, any other comments? Okay.
That's going to be short. I'm assuming this is step number 3, not step number 1, which means you are sending all of the information to your target market already. You know your avatar, and this is very targeted message.
Right.
So that's why when you spend the money, you actually get a good return.
Correct.
Versus whatever the mass marketing that we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So just exactly to that point, good timing. So leverage applies to marketing just as it applies in operations. It costs you the same to send out a flyer that gets a 1% response rate as it does to get a 10% response rate. If I send out 10,000, it costs me the same. But in one case, I might only get a 1% response rate, or maybe less. 1% is actually not too bad. But it's going to cost exactly the same amount to send that out and get a 10% response rate. So which would you rather have? Right? The 10%. So my recommendation, to get the 10%, you have to have this target market. You have to talk directly to them. You have to enter the conversation in their mind. And the only way to get the high percent is to be very targeted, at least with the type of companies that I work with. Okay? Getting prospects to seek you out and or realize I need help. Oh, sorry, I went on to, yeah, okay. So we're on to the push marketing. So number 4 is, the fourth mistake is push marketing. And what I mean by push marketing is talking about basically ourselves and not talking about from the prospect's perspective. So getting prospects to seek you out and or realize I need help is pull marketing. So whenever I do any marketing, even though it might be outbound marketing, so it's outbound marketing, meaning I'm sending something out, my objective is to get them to contact me and say I need help. Right? That's what I'm referring to as pull marketing. Spewing everything you know out to your market is about you. It's not about them, because they don't care. And your marketing itself should be valuable. Give away some of your best stuff and get people to act now. So if you can give them, I think on the next slide I have this mentioned, but if you can give them results in advance, if they can read an article from you or have some sort of interaction with you, it may not be personally, but have some sort of interaction with you, and they get value from that interaction, and better yet, if they get some sort of result, what do they immediately assume? They got that for free, let's say, and they got a result. What do they think about, what might they think if they engage you? Yeah, if this is free, what would I get if I paid something? Right? So in all my marketing, I try to get them to say, I need help. And they don't always, sometimes they say actually that, I need your help. Other times I'm just looking for them to reach out. They contact me. And if they contact me, what's my chances of selling them, closing them? I close about 70%. So I know what the conversion rate of every step of my funnel is. That runs, that's all automated, that's always going. And when they contact me, I know I'm going to close about 70%. Yeah, not too bad. And the last point, get people to act now. One of the things I've learned over the last few years is that if there's no reason for them to take action now, they'll save it for another day. And if we believe that what we offer, the outcomes that we offer, can help them, that we have good stuff, And it's for their benefit to engage us. We don't want to let them put it off. Let's create a sense of urgency. I'm not talking about making something up, but let's create a sense of urgency for them to act. Otherwise, they go, oh, I can always, I'll watch that. Oh, the webinar is going to be recorded. The webinar is going to be recorded. I'll catch that later, right? Don't record your webinars. Or if you do, don't tell them that there is going to be a recording. They won't show up. Okay, so give your prospects results in advance as much as you can. Call out the elephant in the room. So whatever it is that's taboo or controversial, call it out. It gets their attention. Again, they get that you get it. Repurpose content. So people, some people complain, well, you're talking about I would have to redo all my marketing to this specific target market. Yeah, you're going to have to repurpose some things. You don't have to completely start over, but you can take what you already have and repurpose it. The other way you can repurpose is once you have an article. So let's say I've written a really great article that has a great aha moment in it. Maybe it gives them some actions that they could get some results in advance. Now, what else could I do with that article I already have? I just created it. You make a video from it. Right? So I could take the article and turn it into a video. Now I have a video. What could I do with that video? Put it on YouTube. Put it on Vimeo. Broadcast it out. Oh, now I could strip the audio out of that, and now I have a podcast from one piece of content that's really good. So it's not like you have to, put out tons of new marketing, but you have to take your really good marketing, your really good stuff, and get the best use from it. Inherent simplicity applies in marketing too. People want simple ideas, not complex ones. Influential writing is not about writing better, it's about simplifying the way things are done. So if it's too complicated, they're just not even going to finish reading it. Right? If they can't even get their mind around what's going on. If you can't explain what you do in a very succinct way, they're not going to buy it. They're not even going to finish listening to it. We talk a lot about selling TOC. I think one of the reasons why it's hard to sell TOC is we make it sound too complicated. It's really simple. I mean, we talk about how simple it is, and then we try to sell it, and we got it all. It's all so complicated. I think we sometimes turn people off. If you can't describe DVR in a couple minutes, we've got an issue, right? Okay. And I think that also comes back to we want to show all of our knowledge, so we don't make it simple. We share everything. Right? So it kind of comes back to that previous slide where we almost share too much. Let's show them how smart we are, and we share everything. Okay, so without a detailed avatar of who you're marketing to, writing to, and for, what makes them tick, you're engaging in blind target shooting. So you have to be very specific. Okay, so back to our example. So the next question for you guys is, how will you generate leads? So again, you can answer this for your company or for the consultant company. We have selected, we have the target market, so we know what we're selling, who we're selling it to. So now we need to know, well, how are we going to generate leads? Okay, so let's take a couple minutes and just jot down some ideas about how you might generate leads. And there's nobody in here can tell you that what your idea is wrong. It has to be tested. When I first started consulting, the way that I set up my funnel was I would go out and give speeches. I gave over 50 speeches a year. Yeah, that's someplace every week. giving a speech. So I would fly all over, 50 speeches a year, and the size of the group was, they were all CEO groups, so they were the right target market. I did have a target niche, and while they were a group of CEOs, they weren't all my target. But I would get anywhere from 2 to 4 companies in that group interested. And at the end of the speech, I had a call to action of what they needed to do to contact me. So if you're interested, here's what you do. So they had to reach out to me. And then I took them through the process of converting them to a customer. Now I don't give any speeches other than here. And I do mostly online stuff and direct mail. I like direct mail as well. So anybody who's got an idea about either what you currently do or what you might do? That's for the video.
Well, the first thing that came to mind, of course, was social media.
Mm-hmm.
And second would be referrals, possibly.
Sure.
With some kind of bonus referral program.
Okay, and how would you use social media?
Well, I mean, it depends on the product and what you're selling,
Mm-hmm.
really. I mean, it would have to be tailored to that, but I mean, I don't know how to answer that.
Okay. But you'd figure out some ways that you might use social media and test that?
Oh, sure. For example, for my business, perhaps with a new excavator coupler,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what are we doing to promote people that have had great success and have prevented failures and downtime, and who have they told about it, and Facebook likes, and
Mm-hmm.
track and trend that, and
Yeah.
share the stories.
Yeah, cool. Anybody else? Oh, got one in the back. One thing that I've tried that failed miserably was Facebook advertising. My prospects do not do Facebook.
How many participants here use Facebook?
I don't know. How many participants here use Facebook? Oh, what is that? A little more than half? Not much more, but. Okay, good.
For me, has something to do with the mafia offer. Can probably to do something that is kind of weird or call the attention from people, and hook them to do something that is not. They are risking so much, but to willing to take action to discover something new, more or less. So
I'm not sure I understood.
I don't know if I understand well, but it's how you start that someone, how you call the attention from someone is the idea, or not?
Well, yeah. How would you get somebody? How would you go about trying to get somebody to contact you to say, yes, I need your help? So would you have blog posts? Would you do cold calling? Would you how would you get leads? How would you get people who were interested?
In my case, what I say is like doing something that is kind of weird that attract that attention.
Do something to attract attention.
Yeah.
Okay, like you're gonna skydive and with some kind of banner on.
So for me, it could be probably from what I have done is like kind of offering something that is unexpected, more or less.
Offer something unexpected. Okay, that's good. I've seen people streak across football fields with capes on that had some kind of advertising on the back. Everybody saw it. Right? There's all kinds of things, and again, that might be like the best return on investment ever. We never know until we test. So when I was the 3 minutes in jail, yeah, the bail. So when I was the global marketing director for Goldratt Consulting, people would always have ideas about how to market. And there were more ideas than I could deal with. So my response was always, yeah, we should test that. Because who am I to say that's not going to work? I don't know. But I don't know that it is going to work either. So let's test it. Let's test it against, a control. And we did some direct marketing, and we had about I think 1.5% response rate, which wasn't too bad. And since then, I've done some direct marketing, and I've got a 4% response rate. Everybody, I'm using the term direct marketing. Does everybody know what that means? Okay. So you send out something in the mail. All right? Snail mail. Yeah. The question was how many people use LinkedIn? So how many people in here use LinkedIn? More than Facebook? Yeah. Yeah. What does? Paid ads?
Pay-per-click ads.
On LinkedIn?
We buy as much capacity as we can purchase before the price goes exponential.
Yeah. I do LinkedIn paid ads too. And I use Google retargeting. Those work for me. But regular Google ads, I didn't get as good a return. So you have to test. And just because it worked for me or it worked for Justin, it may not work for you. And I said Facebook didn't work for my clients. It might work for yours. One of the things that I did that was really difficult to get the data on was the speeches. Just this year, 5 years after I gave a speech, I got 6 clients from a speech I gave 5 years ago. Now, I kept getting these calls, and I thought, what the heck is going on? One of them, but 5 of them? And so I started asking them, why are you guys just calling me now? And they said, well, we had an industry meeting. We all remembered, we got together and we were discussing your presentation. And so then they all followed up this year, which was really odd. So that's a little harder to track, the return on that investment because there was such a delay. And so some marketing things will be like that. They're a little harder to track, but we want to track as much as we can. Okay? All right. So the 5th thing is not measuring the right things or not measuring at all. In operations, we can physically see the constraints. Like you can walk the shop floor and you see the pile of work. We know that we have a constraint there. But in marketing, we can't see it. We need data. We need to know that from, I get 1,000 people come in the funnel here, and, let's say 100 of them convert to the next step, but then between that step and the next step, it drops to 1. Okay, now I have some data to say that might be where the issue is. So in marketing, we really need data to make sure that things are working, we're focused on the right things. You can know and measure the results of your marketing by measuring how many sales you make from each marketing communication that you use. And what's working for you, Twitter, LinkedIn, websites, webinars, direct mail, Facebook, Pinterest, article writing. I mean, any or all of these things could work for you. There's all kinds of interesting stuff happening in mobile marketing. Facebook Live videos is just in the last month Facebook is now doing these live videos you can get into somebody's timeline. And if Facebook worked for my clients, I would do that. But my clients don't seem to hang out on Facebook, right? So there's always all kinds of interesting things you could try. Now, do you think I would suggest that you try all of those at once? No. It's still about focus, right? So pick one, your best guess of what you think would work for your audience because you know your avatar. You kind of have a sense of where they're going to hang out. Take your best guess and start with one and see what the results are. If they're good results, then try another one. Yep. Yeah, if you have your avatar, you can ask, yeah. Yeah, and she said if you have your avatar, you can certainly ask if there's somebody that represents your avatar. And the funny thing is, once you have your avatar, you will meet that person. Like I named mine Bob, and I had all these details, and then I met Bob, and I went, this is Bob. This is the avatar. This is exactly who I described. So you will meet your avatar. How many leads do you generate? By what methods? What's your conversion rate at each step of your process? So knowing that conversion rate will help to determine if you have an issue somewhere, right? So you want to stay on top of the numbers. I see too many people that don't track. They don't track. So you ask them, is it working? And they go, well, the phone's not ringing. So they don't have any way of knowing. What's your sales conversion process, your retention process? We talked about that a really quick way to get more business is with your existing customers. You also don't want to lose customers. I mean, that would be a waste. So let's make sure that we're exploiting and we're retaining everybody that we have. One of the things, even like within TOCICO, one of the things that I talk about for TOCICO is let's make sure we don't lose any members, right? We did all the hard work of getting them as a member. Let's not lose them. Let's make sure they know about all the videos and all the content that's on the TOCICO website that they get from being a member. Let's make sure that they're aware of all that and retain what we have. So making sure that you retain what you have is really important. You can also do upsells or post-sales. So again, getting more sales from your existing client base. What else could you sell them? Maybe you don't have something that you could sell them, but maybe you know somebody who does and you can get a commission. So you have the target market. Things like that can be interesting. What do you spend on marketing and what ROI does each generate? And ROIs will be much better if you have a specific target market. So that 1%, 10% example, the more targeted you are, the more likely you are to get that 10% response instead of the 1% response. When calculating your ROI, consider both time and money. So like when I was giving speeches, I had to travel there. So it took, depending on where it was, a half day to a full day of travel. I had to be there and give the speech. I had to fly home. I got paid to do the speech, but it also took 2 days. So you got to take into account that time. So is that 2 days, the money I generated plus any businesses I got from it, is that worth it? Don't discount your time. Your time is important because we all sell the same thing, and we're selling our capacity or our time. If you don't know these numbers, how will you know where to focus your efforts and what to improve? And the answer, of course, is you won't. You're, shooting in the dark. Testing is how we improve our marketing. What to test in what order depends on your measures, what your measures are indicating. So test your message. You can test the wording, the pictures, the color, the placement, the fonts. So you can test all kinds of things. And there are some really interesting ways to do that. You can test the medium, so whether it's direct mail or ads or webinars, closing techniques. So if something's not working, so I do a lot of Mafia offers. And how important do you think the delivery or the presentation of the Mafia offer is to it being accepted? Pretty important. So somebody could come back and say it didn't work. Well, if that's all the data I have, how could I possibly improve that? Right? So a lot of times what we'll do is record those. Let's record the presentation, and if it doesn't work, then at least we can go through it and say, I don't think we quite followed the process here. So we've got to have some information. We can test the sales process. I've been testing in my business, I've been testing how I create that urgency to get them to act now. Testing some different things there. You can test how you make your offers as well as the specifics of your offer. I had one client who kept making the offer, and we gave them some options. So you could do the results-based option, which cost a little bit more, but there was no risk, or you could pay a flat fee. And the client was worried that they said, the offer's not working, they're all paying the flat fee. And I said, well, but how much more are you selling? So they weren't taking the offer, but they were selling a lot more at the flat rate. That, to me, is a success, right? The ability to turn floods of information into real knowledge has become one of today's most valuable resources. So some way, and you don't have to get crazy, there is a sense of good enough but you got to have some data in marketing. You have to have some way to know, is this working or not? Or where is the problem? Some way to distinguish. So don't go into analysis paralysis type of thing, but some amount of data. And as you set up new marketing things you want to test, go in knowing this is how we're going to know if it worked, or this is what we're going to know what the return is. So you need to track the right things, and of course you must have a good ROI for marketing. So this is the last exercise, and we're a little bit out of time, so I'll leave that for you guys to do on your own because we're getting at the end, and I just wanted to open up to questions. Yeah.
So one thing I kind of experienced, when I was a controller was, the marketing team would come, coming into my office, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and they're wanting money. They want to increase the budget because we're going to get all these sales and this, and this. And the dilemma I experienced, all right, so we want to have a successful company, which means we need to attract more customers, spend money on marketing. But then we also need to be financially prudent and stewards of our money, so don't spend. And then they're asking me to essentially, because of the uncertainty in marketing, because we have to test, because if you knew, you wouldn't be testing. So they're, throw money at the black hole and let's see what sticks. And then I have to turn around to the CEO and go, well, we blew X amount on marketing and it was a great test. We learned that didn't work. And that's part of the dilemma, I think, is how do you, I think target your market removes a lot of the uncertainty, but not all. It's necessary, but perhaps not sufficient. So
yeah, you can have a very targeted market and just blow some part of your marketing and not be able to sell anything.
Or how do you know that you worded it wrong, or it wasn't this, or whatever the reason may be, So
I guess I would say get expert advice, fresh eyes to look at it.
Right.
But yeah, there is testing. You're going to have to test. There are some things you can do that are less costly to test. So you could start with those and ramp up, and you can do much smaller tests. So you could do it. You don't have to mail all 10,000, but we can mail 1,000. Right, so we can do some things to test. Yeah. All right, so these are the 5 marketing mistakes. I think, again, the biggest, most frequent one, the most resisted one is not selecting that target market. So I challenge you all to get very targeted and very specific and enter that conversation in your prospect's mind. And I think that you'll find that your sales will go up. Right? Thank you all very much.